You know that moment when you realize your entire life is about to change? When everything you thought was solid ground suddenly feels like quicksand beneath your feet? Yeah, that was me, standing in my bedroom at 3 in the afternoon on a random Tuesday, holding my wallet and staring at the empty space where 3 crisp $50 bills should have been. Let me back up a little bit and give you the full picture because this story, it's been building for years. And what happened that Tuesday was just the final crack in a dam that had been holding back years of frustration, resentment, and honestly, some serious family dysfunction. My name is Sarah. I'm 36 years old, and I live in a comfortable suburban neighborhood just outside Portland, Oregon. Picture those streets with the big maple trees, well-maintained lawns, and houses that all look different but somehow the same. You know what I mean? It's the kind of neighborhood where people actually wave to each other, where kids ride bikes down the sidewalk, and where everyone pretends their life is absolutely perfect even when it's falling apart behind closed doors. I married my husband Michael 3 years ago. He's 42, works as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown, and when I met him, I genuinely thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was kind, funny, stable, and seemed like he had his life together. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and I remember thinking how refreshing it was to meet a man who actually asked questions about my life instead of just talking about himself. He wanted to know about my work as a marketing coordinator, my love of hiking, my weird obsession with true crime podcasts, everything. Our relationship moved pretty quickly, which looking back maybe should have been a red flag. But I was 33, tired of the dating scene, and ready to settle down. When Michael proposed after just 10 months of dating, I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and family at a winery in Willamette Valley. It was perfect, or at least I thought it was. But here's the thing nobody tells you about marrying someone with kids from a previous marriage. You're not just marrying that person. You're marrying their entire complicated history, their ex's influence, and most importantly, their children, who may or may not want you in their lives. Enter Madison, my stepdaughter, my nemesis, my ultimate source of stress and anxiety for the past 3 years. When I first met Madison, she was 19 years old, a sophomore at Portland State University, or at least that's what Michael told me. She was living with her mother, Catherine, in a nice apartment complex on the east side of the city. Catherine and Michael had divorced when Madison was 12, and from what Michael told me, it had been relatively amicable. They'd agreed on joint custody, split holidays, the whole co-parenting thing that everyone says is so important for the kids. That first meeting was at a trendy brunch spot in the Pearl District. Michael was nervous, I could tell. He kept adjusting his collar and checking his phone, making sure Madison was still coming. When she finally walked in, 15 minutes late, I stood up with a smile, ready to make a great first impression. Madison was pretty in that effortless way some young women are. Long blonde hair, clear skin, wearing expensive athleisure that probably cost more than my entire outfit. She barely glanced at me, gave her dad a quick hug, and immediately started scrolling on her phone before we'd even ordered. "Madison, this is Sarah," Michael said, his voice hopeful and a little too enthusiastic. "Hey," she muttered, not looking up from her screen. I tried to engage her throughout the meal, asking about school, her major, she was undecided, her interests, her friends. Every answer was a variation of I don't know or whatever. But what really stuck with me was the moment when she wanted to order this elaborate acai bowl that cost $32. When the waiter said they were out of the specific type of granola it came with, Madison literally threw her menu down on the table. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "This place has like 5-star reviews and they can't even stock their ingredients." Michael immediately jumped in to soothe her. "It's okay, Maddie, you can get something else. What about the avocado toast? You love that." "I wanted the acai bowl, Dad," she said, her voice taking on this whiny quality that made my skin crawl. To my absolute shock, Michael called the waiter back over and asked if they could make a special trip to get the specific granola Madison wanted. The waiter, looking exhausted, said he'd see what he could do. 20 minutes later, Madison got her acai bowl, barely said thank you, and spent the rest of brunch complaining about her roommate's loud music and how her mother wouldn't increase her monthly allowance. I should have seen the red flags, I really should have, but love makes you blind, or maybe just willfully ignorant. I told myself Madison was just young, still adjusting to her dad dating someone new, dealing with typical college stress. I could be patient, I could be understanding, I could win her over with time. Spoiler alert, I was dead wrong. Michael and I got married in June, a beautiful outdoor ceremony with about 60 guests. Madison came, wearing a black dress that looked more appropriate for a funeral than a wedding, and left right after dinner without even saying goodbye. Catherine, Michael's ex-wife, didn't attend, which I was actually grateful for. Less drama, or so I thought. After the honeymoon, a lovely week in Maui that felt like a dream, reality hit hard. Michael owned this beautiful 4-bedroom house in West Lynn, a suburb just south of Portland. It was the house he'd bought during his marriage to Catherine, and while I had some mixed feelings about moving into his ex-wife's former home, the house itself was gorgeous. Craftsman style, updated kitchen, a backyard with a fire pit, and a garden I was excited to work on. What I didn't realize was that Madison had her own key to the house, and that she felt completely entitled to come and go as she pleased, treating the place like it was still her childhood home, which technically it was, but boundaries, people. Boundaries are important. The first few months were an adjustment. Madison would show up unannounced, usually when I was home alone, raid the refrigerator, leave her dishes everywhere, and act like I was the intruder in her house. When I gently mentioned to Michael that maybe Madison should call before coming over, he looked at me like I'd suggested we abandon a puppy on the side of the road. "Sarah, this is her home too. I can't ask her to call before visiting her own father," he said, genuinely confused by my request. "I'm not saying she can't visit," I tried to explain. "I just think it would be nice to have a heads up. Sometimes I'm working from home in my pajamas, or I have plans, or—" "She's my daughter," he interrupted. "She's always welcome here." That should have been another red flag. The way Michael couldn't see past his role as Madison's father to understand my perspective as his wife. But again, I told myself we'd figure it out. These were just growing pains. Every blended family goes through this, right? Then Madison dropped out of college, just stopped going to classes halfway through her junior year. According to her, the professors were idiots, the coursework was pointless, and she needed time to find herself and figure out what she was really passionate about. Catherine apparently had reached her limit with Madison's attitude and lack of direction. She told Madison she needed to either go back to school, get a job, or find her own place. And where do you think Madison ended up? That's right, on our doorstep with 3 suitcases and an attitude that could cut glass. "Dad, Mom kicked me out," Madison said, tears streaming down her face. "She said I'm a disappointment and she doesn't want me living with her anymore. Can I stay here, please?" What was Michael supposed to say? This was his daughter, crying and asking for help. Of course he said yes. We turned one of the guest rooms into Madison's room, and she moved in temporarily while she got back on her feet. That was 2 years ago. She never left. Living with Madison was like living with a tornado that had a credit card and a sense of entitlement the size of Texas. She didn't work, she didn't go to school, she didn't contribute to groceries, utilities, or rent. She woke up around noon, spent her days watching reality TV and scrolling through social media, and went out with her friends most evenings, coming home at 2 or 3 in the morning, stomping up the stairs and waking us up. I tried to be patient. I really did. I told myself she was still young, that she was figuring things out, that eventually she'd find her path. Michael kept saying she just needed time, that pushing her would make things worse, that she'd come around on her own. But months turned into a year, and nothing changed. If anything, Madison got more comfortable in her lifestyle of doing absolutely nothing. She started making demands: better Wi-Fi for her room, a new laptop, a gym membership, Money for clothes, money for dinners out, money for concerts and festivals with her friends. And Michael gave it to her every time. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. Madison would leave her stuff everywhere. The kitchen would be a disaster after she made herself food, which was always elaborate meals that required dozens of ingredients and every pot and pan we owned. She never cleaned up. When I'd ask her to clean, she'd say, "I will," and then never do it. Her bathroom was a nightmare. Makeup and hair products covering every surface, wet towels on the floor, hair in the sink and shower drain. I tried talking to Michael about it, suggesting we set some house rules, some expectations for basic cleanliness and respect. "She's just not naturally neat," he'd say. "Some people are messy, it's not a big deal." "It is a big deal when I'm the one cleaning up after her constantly," I'd respond, feeling my frustration build. "I work full-time too, Michael. Why am I responsible for cleaning up after a 21-year-old adult?" "I'll talk to her," he'd promise. But he never really did, or if he did, it didn't make any difference. The worst part was how Madison treated me. She wasn't outwardly hostile, which almost would have been easier to deal with. Instead, she was passively aggressive, dismissive, and completely disrespectful in subtle ways that made me feel like I was going crazy. She'd interrupt me when I was talking. She'd make plans with Michael without including me or even letting me know. She'd eat the food I'd bought for specific meals I was planning to cook. She'd use my things without asking. My nice shampoo, my makeup, even my clothes if they fit her. When I'd bring these things up to Michael, he'd minimize them. "She probably just forgot it was yours." "It's just shampoo, Sarah. We can buy more." "You're reading too much into this. Madison doesn't mean anything by it." But I knew she did. I could see it in her eyes when she'd smirk at me. I could hear it in her tone when she'd make little comments about how I did things differently than her mother, how her mother's cooking was better, how her mother understood her in ways I never could. The tension in the house was palpable. Michael would try to keep the peace, acting as a mediator between us, but he always took Madison's side when it really mattered. I started to feel isolated in my own marriage, like I was the problem, like I was the mean stepmother from a Disney movie who couldn't just love and accept her husband's daughter. I started spending more time at work, staying late, volunteering for extra projects, anything to avoid coming home to the mess, the tension, and the feeling of being a guest in my own house. My friends noticed, my co-workers noticed. But I kept making excuses, saying everything was fine, that blended families were just hard sometimes. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening in late March. I'd had a particularly long day at work, dealing with a difficult client and a project that wasn't coming together the way I'd hoped. I stopped at the grocery store on my way home, picking up ingredients for a nice dinner. I thought maybe if I made an effort, cooked something special, we could all sit down together and have a pleasant family meal. Maybe that would help. When I got home, Madison was in the living room with 3 of her friends, all of them laughing loudly at something on someone's phone. The coffee table was covered in empty snack bags, soda cans, and someone's takeout containers. None of them acknowledged me when I walked in with my arms full of grocery bags. I put the groceries away and started prepping dinner. Michael came home about an hour later, and we actually had a nice evening, just the 2 of us in the kitchen, cooking together, talking about our days. Madison and her friends had gone upstairs to her room, and for a moment, things felt normal. Good, even. After dinner, I went upstairs to our bedroom to change into comfortable clothes. That's when I noticed my purse sitting on the bed. I always kept it in the closet on a specific shelf, but it was out, the zipper partially open. My stomach dropped. I opened my wallet, and that's when I saw it. The $150 I'd withdrawn from the ATM that morning, gone. I'd taken it out specifically to pay our lawn care guy who only accepted cash. He was coming the next day, and now the money was just gone. I stood there staring at the empty billfold section of my wallet, my hands shaking. I knew exactly what had happened, but I needed to be sure. I went downstairs and found Michael watching TV in the den. Michael, did you take any cash out of my wallet? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He looked up, confused. No, why would I do that? There was $150 in there this morning, and now it's gone. He sat up straighter. Are you sure you had that much? Maybe you... I'm sure, I interrupted. I withdrew it specifically to pay Carlos tomorrow. Did Madison come into our room today? His face changed. He knew where this was going. Sarah, don't jump to conclusions. Michael, I need you to ask her if she took the money. I'm not going to accuse my daughter of stealing, he said, his voice rising slightly. I'm not asking you to accuse her. I'm asking you to ask her. There's a difference. We went back and forth for a few minutes before he finally, reluctantly, agreed to talk to Madison. Her friends had left by then, and she was in the kitchen making herself a snack. Hey, Maddie, Michael said, his tone gentle. Did you by any chance go into our bedroom today? She didn't even look up from the sandwich she was making. Yeah, I needed to borrow Sarah's phone charger. Mine broke. Did you see Sarah's purse in there? Now she looked up, her eyes narrowing. Why? Is something missing? Just answer the question, honey. I didn't touch her purse, Madison said, her voice defensive. Why would I? Michael looked at me as if this settled the matter, but I wasn't satisfied. Madison, I had cash in my wallet this morning and now it's gone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. If you needed money, you could have just asked. Her face flushed red. I didn't take your money. Oh my God, you're actually accusing me of being a thief. This is unbelievable. I'm not accusing you, I started, but she cut me off. Yes, you are. You've hated me since day one, and now you're trying to make my dad think I'm some kind of criminal. She stormed out of the kitchen, and moments later I heard her bedroom door slam hard enough to shake the pictures on the walls. Michael turned to me, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. Sarah, she said she didn't take it. Maybe you miscounted, or maybe... I didn't miscount, Michael. I know exactly how much was in my wallet. Well, what do you want me to do? Search her room? Go through her things? She's my daughter, and she said she didn't take it. So you believe her over me? I believe she wouldn't steal from us. That stung, us, as if I wasn't part of that us. The next morning, I had to use my credit card to pay Carlos, explaining that I'd forgotten to get cash. I felt humiliated and angry, so incredibly angry. That evening, after Michael had left for his weekly basketball game with his friends, Madison came downstairs. I was in the living room, reading a book, trying to distract myself from the tension that had been building all day. I know you think I took your money, Madison said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. I looked up. Did you? No, but you're going to believe what you want to believe anyway. Madison, if you needed money, all you had to do was ask. We give you money all the time. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You give me money? You mean my dad gives me money? You don't give me anything. You just tolerate me because you have to. That's not true. Please, I see the way you look at me. You wish I wasn't here. You wish it was just you and my dad playing house in your perfect little life. I stood up, setting my book aside. Madison, I have tried so hard to build a relationship with you. I've been patient. I've been understanding. I've given you space and time. But you treat this house like a hotel. You treat me like I'm invisible. And now money is missing and you're the only person who had access to my purse. I didn't take your stupid money, she shouted. Then where did it go? I shouted back, my patience finally snapping. We stood there staring at each other, the air between us crackling with hostility. Finally, Madison turned and went back upstairs. 20 minutes later, I heard her leave the house, her car peeling out of the driveway. When Michael got home, I told him everything. He listened, but I could see his defensiveness building. She's going through a tough time, he said. Michael, she's 21 years old. She's not a child. She needs to take responsibility for her actions. What do you want me to do, Sarah? And that's when I said it. The words that had been building up for months, maybe years. The words I'd been too scared to say because I knew once I said them, everything would change. I want her out, Michael. I want her to move out and learn to take care of herself like every other adult her age. His face went pale. Are you serious right now? Completely serious. She doesn't work, she doesn't contribute, she's disrespectful, and now she's stealing from us. You don't know that she stole. Michael, wake up! Who else could have taken that money? It was in my wallet, in our bedroom, in our home. She admitted she was in our room. She's the only other person who had access to it. We argued for over an hour. Michael kept making excuses for Madison, kept saying she needed more time, kept implying that I was being unreasonable and unloving. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, I went to bed. Michael slept in the guest room that night. The next few days were tense and silent. Michael barely spoke to me. Madison avoided me entirely. I felt like a stranger in my own home, like I was the villain in a story where I was just trying to maintain basic boundaries and respect. Then, a week after the money went missing, I came home early from work with a migraine. I'd left my phone at home by accident, so I couldn't call Michael to let him know I was coming home. As I walked up the driveway, I saw Madison getting out of an Uber, laughing and looking at her phone. Her hair looked different, lighter, highlighted, very professionally done. I felt my blood turn to ice. Madison saw me and her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Hey, Sarah," she said, her tone falsely casual. "Nice hair," I said, my voice flat. "Oh yeah, thanks. I had a great stylist." "How did you pay for it?" She shrugged. "I had some money saved up." I walked past her into the house, my mind racing. I went straight to my computer and logged into my bank account. I checked the ATM withdrawal from the week before, $150. The receipt was still in my purse. I took a photo of it. Then I Googled high-end hair salons in Portland. I called 4 before I found the right one. Yes, they had a client named Madison Smith, Michael's last name, who had come in last week. The service total had been $145. I had proof. Finally, I had proof. When Michael came home that evening, I showed him everything. The receipt, the phone call confirmation, Madison's brand new expensive hair color that she definitely couldn't have afforded on her own since she had no income. "Michael, she stole from me. She lied about it. And she used the money to go to a salon," I said, laying it all out. He looked at the evidence, and I saw something shift in his face. He couldn't deny it anymore. But what he said next shocked me. "Okay, maybe she did take the money, but Sarah, she's my daughter. I can't just kick her out over this. She made a mistake. She's young. We'll talk to her. She'll pay you back and—" "No," I interrupted. No, this isn't just about the money, Michael. This is about respect. This is about her taking responsibility for her actions. This is about you enabling her to be a spoiled, entitled adult who thinks she can do whatever she wants without consequences." "She's my daughter," he repeated, as if that explained everything. "And I'm your wife," I said quietly. "Doesn't that count for something?" We stared at each other, and in that moment, I saw our entire future play out. If nothing changed, we'd continue like this. Madison would never leave, never grow up, never change. And I would become more and more resentful, more and more isolated, until our marriage crumbled under the weight of it all. "I'm giving you an ultimatum," I heard myself say. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth, but once I started, I couldn't stop. "Madison needs to move out, or I'm filing for divorce." The silence after I delivered the ultimatum was deafening. Michael just stood there in our kitchen, the evidence of Madison's theft spread out on the counter between us, staring at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You can't be serious," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life, Michael." "Sarah, that's my daughter. You're asking me to choose between you and my child." "She's not a child," I practically shouted, my frustration boiling over. "She's 21 years old. Most people her age are living on their own, working jobs, paying bills, figuring out their lives. She's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. You've just never given her a reason to try because you keep enabling her." Michael's face reddened. "I'm not enabling her. I'm being a good father. I'm supporting my daughter during a difficult time in her life. A difficult time that's lasted 2 years. Michael, when does it end? When does she become responsible for herself? When she's 25, 30? Never? This isn't fair, he said, shaking his head. You're putting me in an impossible position. No, you put yourself in this position by refusing to set boundaries with her, by choosing her over our marriage every single time there's a conflict, by letting her treat me like garbage in my own home. We argued in circles for what felt like hours. Michael kept insisting that I was being unreasonable, that families don't give up on each other, that marriage means being flexible and understanding. I kept pointing out that I'd been flexible and understanding for 2 years, and all it had gotten me was a stepdaughter who stole from me and a husband who defended her. Finally, around 11 o'clock that night, Michael said the words that made my heart sink. I can't kick my daughter out. I'm sorry, Sarah, but I just can't do that. He walked out of the kitchen, and I heard him going upstairs to the guest room again. I stood there alone, surrounded by the evidence of Madison's betrayal and my husband's inability to put our marriage first. And I realized that I'd meant what I said. I couldn't live like this anymore. The next morning was a Saturday. I woke up early, my eyes gritty from crying myself to sleep, and I made a decision. I got dressed, drove to a coffee shop across town, and looked up divorce attorneys on my phone. I spent the morning reading reviews, checking credentials, and finally made a call to schedule a consultation. The attorney, a woman named Patricia Henderson, could see me Monday afternoon. I made the appointment. The rest of the weekend was unbearable. Michael tried to talk to me several times, but I had nothing left to say. Madison stayed in her room mostly, though I caught her smirking at me once when I passed her in the hallway. She knew what was happening. She knew she'd won. On Monday, I told work I had a doctor's appointment and left early. Patricia Henderson's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that I immediately appreciated. I told her everything, the whole story from the beginning of my relationship with Michael to Madison's theft to the ultimatum. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said, "Sarah, I want you to understand something. Getting a divorce over a stepdaughter situation is more common than you might think. You're not a bad person for reaching your limit. Sometimes blended families just don't work, no matter how hard everyone tries." "I feel like I'm giving up," I admitted. "You're not giving up. You're protecting yourself. There's a difference." She explained the divorce process in Oregon, the timeline, what I should expect. We discussed assets. The house was in Michael's name only since he'd bought it before we married, but we had joint accounts and other shared property. She said the process could take anywhere from a few months to a year, depending on how cooperative Michael was. I signed the retainer agreement and walked out of her office feeling both terrified and strangely relieved. I'd taken the first step. There was no going back now. I didn't tell Michael right away. Part of me wasn't ready for that conversation, and part of me was waiting for the right moment. But that moment came sooner than I expected, in the worst possible way. It was the following Thursday, exactly 2 weeks after I'd discovered the missing money. I came home from work to find Madison in the kitchen, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the fact that she had a group of her friends over again, and they were blasting music so loud I could hear it from the driveway. I walked in, my head already pounding from the noise, and found the kitchen in absolute chaos. There were bottles and cans everywhere, food left out, dishes piled in the sink. The living room wasn't much better. It looked like a party had happened, which apparently it had. I found Madison in the living room, dancing with her friends, clearly having had a few drinks despite it being 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. "Madison!" I shouted over the music. "Turn that down!" She either didn't hear me or pretended not to. I walked over to the speaker and turned it off myself. The sudden silence was jarring. Madison spun around, her face flushed. "What the hell, Sarah?" "What the hell?" I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "What the hell is right? This is my home, Madison. You can't just throw parties in the middle of the day when people are trying to work and live here." "Oh my God, relax. We're just having fun." Look at this place. There's trash everywhere, food left out, dishes piled up. This is completely unacceptable. One of her friends, a girl with pink hair, giggled. Someone's uptight. I ignored her, focusing on Madison. You need to clean all of this up right now, and your friends need to leave. You can't tell me what to do, Madison said, her words slightly slurred. This is my dad's house. It's my house too, and your father and I pay all the bills here, in case you've forgotten. You don't pay rent, you don't pay for food, you don't contribute anything. The least you can do is show some basic respect. Madison's face twisted into an ugly sneer. You know what your problem is, Sarah? You're jealous. You're jealous because my dad loves me more than he loves you. You're just some woman he married, but I'm his daughter. I'm his blood. You'll never be as important to him as I am. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Her friends were watching with wide eyes, clearly entertained by the drama. I felt my face burning with humiliation and rage. Clean up this mess, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. All of you, get out, now. Make me, Madison challenged. I'd never been a violent person. I'd never even thought about physically fighting someone. But in that moment, standing in my destroyed living room, looking at my stepdaughter's smug face, I came closer than I ever had to losing complete control. Instead, I turned around and walked out. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going, I just drove. I ended up at a park near the Willamette River, parked overlooking the water, and sat there for 2 hours, crying and trying to process what had just happened. When I finally calmed down enough to think clearly, I called Patricia Henderson. Even though it was after business hours, she answered. I need to move forward with the divorce, I told her, as soon as possible. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow, she said gently. Are you okay, Sarah? No, I admitted, but I will be. The divorce papers were ready by the end of the week. Patricia had them delivered to her office, and I picked them up on Friday afternoon. I brought them home, put them in a folder, and waited for Michael to get home from work. He walked in around 6:30, looking tired. Madison was in her room. Her friends had apparently left shortly after I did the previous day, and the house had been cleaned up, though I doubted Madison had done it herself. Michael, we need to talk, I said. He sighed. Sarah, look, about yesterday with Madison, I held up my hand to stop him. It doesn't matter anymore. I tried to tell you. I gave you an ultimatum. You made your choice. I handed him the folder. He opened it, and I watched his face go pale as he realized what he was looking at. Divorce papers, he whispered. I filed them this morning. You'll need to get your own attorney. Sarah, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... Michael, I'm done. I've been done for a while. I just didn't want to admit it. You've made it clear that Madison will always come first, and I can't live like that anymore. I won't. His eyes filled with tears. I love you. I know you do. But love isn't enough when there's no respect, no partnership, no willingness to compromise. I'm not asking you to choose between loving me and loving your daughter. I'm asking you to set healthy boundaries with her and prioritize our marriage. You've shown me over and over that you can't or won't do that. What about the ultimatum? I thought you said she had to move out or you'd leave. Why don't we try that first? I'll tell her she needs to find her own place and... I shook my head. It's too late, Michael. Even if you told her to leave right now, I'd always know you only did it because I forced your hand, not because you recognized it was the right thing to do. And the first time something else came up with Madison, we'd be right back here again. We talked for another hour, but my mind was made up. Michael looked devastated, broken even, but there was also something like acceptance in his eyes. Maybe part of him had known this was coming. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I started packing my things. I'd already found a small apartment to rent on the other side of town, a one-bedroom place that was available immediately. It wasn't much, but it would be mine. Peaceful, Madison-free. Michael tried several more times over the weekend to change my mind. He even promised to tell Madison she had to leave, but I could see his heart wasn't in it. He was saying what he thought I wanted to hear, not what he actually believed. If you really wanted her to move out, you would have done it 2 years ago when I first brought it up, I told him. You would have done it when she dropped out of school. You would have done it when she started treating our home like a hotel. You would have done it when she stole from me. The fact that you're only willing to consider it now, when you're about to lose me, tells me everything I need to know. Madison, predictably, found out about the divorce. I don't know if Michael told her or if she overheard us talking, but on Sunday afternoon she cornered me in the hallway. "So you're really leaving?" she asked, her arms crossed. "Yes." "Good. Finally, things can go back to normal around here. My dad will be so much happier without you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw what I should have seen from the beginning. A deeply unhappy, insecure young woman who had never been taught to take responsibility for herself. She wasn't happy. She wasn't winning. She was trapped in a cycle of dependence that was ultimately going to hurt her more than anyone else. "Madison," I said quietly, "I genuinely hope you figure out your life. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you're not going to find it living off your father and treating people who care about you like garbage. Someday, you're going to wake up and realize you've wasted years of your life, and it's going to hurt. I just hope it's not too late by then." Her face flushed, but she didn't respond. She just turned and went back to her room. I moved out on Monday. Michael helped me load my car, both of us quiet and sad. As I drove away from that house for the last time as a resident, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: grief, relief, sadness, anger, and underneath it all, a small seed of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I was finally putting myself first. The first few weeks of separation were brutal. I'd wake up in my small apartment, disoriented and sad, forgetting for a moment why I was there, instead of in the house I'd thought of as home. The apartment was quiet, too quiet after the constant chaos of living with Madison, and I'd lie in bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of traffic and neighbours and feeling utterly alone. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, volunteered for extra assignments, stayed late at the office. Anything to avoid going back to my empty apartment and confronting the reality of my failed marriage. My co-workers noticed the change in me. A few asked if I was okay, and I'd give them vague answers about personal stuff and moving apartments. I wasn't ready to tell the whole story yet. Michael texted me constantly at first. Long messages apologizing, asking if we could talk, suggesting counseling, promising things would be different. I kept my responses brief and focused on the logistics of the divorce. Patricia had advised me not to engage in emotional conversations with him while the divorce was pending, and I followed her advice. The hardest part was the nights. I'd order takeout, eat alone in front of the TV, and try not to think about how different my life had become. I'd imagined growing old with Michael, having a real partnership, maybe even having kids of our own someday. All of that was gone now, and the grief felt overwhelming at times. But slowly, very slowly, something started to shift. The quietness of my apartment began to feel less lonely and more peaceful. I could come home and find everything exactly as I'd left it. No messes to clean up, no drama to deal with, no tension crackling in the air. I started to remember what it felt like to relax in my own space. I reconnected with friends I'd been neglecting. My best friend from college, Amy, who lived about an hour away in Salem, started coming up every other weekend. We'd go hiking, try new restaurants, see movies. All the things I'd stopped doing because I'd been so stressed and drained from the situation at home. "I have to be honest," Amy said one Saturday as we hiked through Forest Park. "I'm relieved you left him. Every time we talked, you sounded more and more miserable. That Madison situation was toxic. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I was more understanding, more patient." I trailed off. "Some situations can't be fixed by trying harder, Sarah. Sometimes the other people have to want to change too. And from everything you told me, neither Michael nor Madison wanted anything to change. They were perfectly happy with the status quo." She was right, of course. That was the painful truth I'd been avoiding. Michael and Madison had been happy with how things were. I was the only one who was miserable, and expecting them to change for my benefit when they saw no problem with the situation had been naive. About 6 weeks after I moved out, something unexpected happened. I was at my apartment on a Thursday evening, working on some marketing materials for a campaign launch, when my phone rang. It was an unknown local number, but something made me answer it. Hello. Hi, is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice, uncertain. Yes, who's this? My name is Catherine Smith. I'm Michael's ex-wife, Madison's mother. I sat up straighter, my heart rate picking up. Oh, hi, how did you get my number? From Michael's phone. I hope you don't mind me calling. I heard about the separation and I wanted to reach out. This was surreal. Okay, look, I know this is weird, but I wanted to apologize. Apologize for what? She sighed, and I could hear the weariness in it. For Madison, for how she treated you. I know some of what went on, and I'm sorry I didn't do more to intervene. You kicked her out, I said carefully. You tried to set boundaries with her. Not soon enough, not firmly enough. Michael and I, we made a lot of mistakes with Madison. I spoiled her terribly when she was young. I felt guilty about the divorce, so I overcompensated. Gave her everything she wanted, never made her face consequences. And Michael did the same thing. We both created this monster, and then we acted surprised when she turned out entitled and irresponsible. I didn't know what to say. This was not a conversation I'd ever expected to have. I heard about the money she stole, Catherine continued, and the hair appointment. That's actually what made me call, because she did the same thing to me about a year before she moved in with Michael. She stole from you too, took my credit card without asking and charged almost $400 at Nordstrom. When I confronted her, she said she needed new clothes for job interviews, which would have been fine, except she never went on any job interviews. She just wanted new outfits for going out with her friends. What did you do? I made her return everything and cut up the credit card. She threw a fit, said I was the worst mother ever, that she hated me. It was ugly. That's when I told her she needed to either get her life together or find somewhere else to live. She chose to move in with her dad. And he didn't know about the credit card thing? Catherine laughed bitterly. Oh, he knew. I told him. He said I was overreacting and that Madison just made a mistake. That's always been Michael's problem. He can't see Madison clearly. She's his little girl, and in his mind, she's always going to be perfect, even when she's clearly not. We talked for almost an hour. Catherine told me about the early years of her marriage to Michael, how he'd been a good husband but an overly indulgent father. She talked about their divorce and how guilty Michael had felt about it, how that guilt had translated into him trying to be the fun parent who never said no to Madison. I hope you don't think I'm calling to badmouth him, Catherine said toward the end of the conversation. Michael is a good person. He really is. But when it comes to Madison, he's blind. And I'm partly responsible for that. I should have put my foot down years ago and insisted we parent her together instead of competing for her affection. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Because I don't want you to feel like the failure of your marriage was your fault. It wasn't. You were trying to set reasonable boundaries in an impossible situation. Madison is 21 years old and has never been held accountable for anything in her life. That's on Michael and me, not you. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, processing the conversation. Part of me felt validated. Catherine had confirmed everything I'd been thinking and feeling. But another part of me felt sad, because if Catherine could see these problems so clearly, why couldn't Michael? The divorce proceedings moved forward. Michael got his own attorney, and thankfully he wasn't fighting me on anything. We didn't have kids together, and the house was in his name, so it was mostly just dividing up our shared accounts and possessions. Patricia said it was one of the more straightforward divorces she'd handled. Sometimes people fight because they're angry or hurt, she told me, but I get the sense that Michael knows this divorce is his fault, even if he won't admit it out loud. He's not fighting you because he knows he's the one who destroyed the marriage. I didn't know if that was true, but I appreciated the thought. Then, about 3 months after I'd moved out, things took a dramatic turn. I was at work when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. This time, it was Michael's number. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice urgent. "Michael," Patricia said we shouldn't have direct contact during the... "This isn't about the divorce, it's about Madison. There are rumors going around about me." My stomach dropped. "What kind of rumors?" "She's telling people I had an affair, that I cheated on you with someone from work, and that's why you left me." "What? Why would she say that?" "I don't know. I think she's angry that you left, angry that things are different now, and she's lashing out. But Sarah, people are believing her. My co-workers, neighbors, even some of my family. My sister called me yesterday asking if it was true." "Did you tell them it's not?" "Of course I did. But people love drama, and the rumor is more interesting than the truth. I'm calling because I wanted you to know, in case people start asking you about it. And I wanted to apologize. This is my daughter spreading these lies, and it's affecting you, and I'm so sorry." I appreciated him calling, but I was also angry. "This is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about, Michael. Madison doing whatever she wants without consequences. Have you talked to her about this?" He was quiet for a moment. "I tried. She denied saying anything." "Of course she did." After we hung up, I immediately called Amy and told her what was happening. Within hours, she'd helped me craft a Facebook post setting the record straight. I kept it simple and dignified. "I've heard there are rumors circulating about why my marriage ended. For the record, there was no infidelity on anyone's part. Sometimes relationships don't work out for other reasons, and that's what happened here. I'd appreciate privacy as I navigate this difficult time." The post got a lot of supportive comments from friends and former colleagues. But the damage was done. The rumor had spread, and once something like that is out there, it's almost impossible to completely erase it. I heard through the grapevine that Madison's lies had even reached Michael's workplace. His boss had apparently pulled him aside to ask about the situation, and while Michael was able to clear things up, the whole thing had been humiliating for him. Good, part of me thought. Maybe now he'd finally understand what I'd been dealing with. A few weeks later, Michael called again. This time his voice was different, defeated, exhausted. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Madison moved back in with Catherine." "Really? How did that happen?" "Catherine showed up at the house and basically told Madison she had to come back home and start following rules. Real rules this time: get a job, contribute to the household, stop the partying and the drama." Madison tried to refuse, but Catherine was, well, she was fierce. She told Madison that if she didn't come back and get her act together, she was cutting her off completely. No more money, no more help, nothing. And Madison agreed. Not exactly. She threw a huge fit, broke some things, said terrible things to both of us. But eventually she packed her stuff and left with Catherine. The house has been so quiet since then. "How are you doing?" "Honestly, I'm a mess. I miss you. I miss our marriage. And I'm finally seeing what you were trying to tell me all along. Madison has been out of control, and I enabled every bit of it. I was so afraid of losing her, of her being mad at me, that I let her destroy everything else in my life." I felt a pang of sympathy for him, but I also felt a sense of finality. "Michael, I hope you and Madison can figure things out, I really do, but it's too late for us. Even if Madison weren't in the picture anymore, too much has happened. The trust is gone." "I know," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." The next few months passed in a blur of paperwork, court dates, and slowly building a new life. The divorce was finalized in early November, about 7 months after I'd first filed. I was officially single again, which felt both liberating and terrifying. I started therapy, something I probably should have done years earlier. My therapist, Dr. Morgan, helped me process not just the divorce, but the deeper patterns that had led me to stay in an unhealthy situation for so long. We talked about codependency, about my need to be liked and accepted, about how I'd minimized my own needs and feelings in an attempt to make everyone else happy. "You can't light yourself on fire to keep other people warm," Dr. Morgan said during one session. "That's essentially what you were doing with Michael and Madison. You were sacrificing your own well-being, your own peace, trying to make an impossible situation work. I just kept thinking if I tried hard enough, if I was patient enough, understanding enough." I trailed off. "Sarah, some situations can't be fixed by one person trying harder. It takes everyone involved being willing to change and grow. Michael wasn't willing to set boundaries with Madison, and Madison wasn't willing to take responsibility for herself. No amount of effort on your part could have changed that. The therapy helped. Slowly, I started to feel less like a victim of circumstances and more like someone who had made a difficult but necessary choice to protect herself. I started to see the strength in leaving rather than just the failure of the marriage ending. I also started dating again, which was terrifying. My first few dates were disasters. I was too nervous, too in my head, too quick to compare every man to Michael. But gradually, I relaxed into it. I met some nice people, had some fun conversations, and remembered what it was like to flirt and laugh and feel attractive. Work got better too. With the divorce behind me and my mental health improving, I was able to focus again. I got a promotion to senior marketing coordinator, which came with a nice raise. I moved out of my tiny apartment and into a larger 2-bedroom place with a balcony overlooking a park. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, a sassy orange tabby I named Mango. My life was starting to feel like mine again. I didn't hear much from Michael after the divorce was finalized. We'd exchanged a few texts about logistics, dividing the last of our shared possessions, finalizing paperwork for insurance and other accounts. But mostly, we'd moved on from each other's lives. Until one day, in late April, about a year and a half after I'd moved out of his house. I was at home, doing some spring cleaning on a Saturday afternoon, when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the peephole before opening the door. Madison. My heart started pounding. I considered not answering, pretending I wasn't home, but something made me open the door, though I kept the security chain on. "Hi," she said. She looked different, thinner, paler, less put together than I'd ever seen her. Her clothes were clean but wrinkled, and she wasn't wearing makeup. "Can we talk?" "What do you want, Madison?" "Please, just 5 minutes. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't desperate." Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain and let her in. She walked into my living room and stood awkwardly, looking around at my apartment. "Nice place," she said. "Thanks, what do you want?" She took a deep breath. "I'm in trouble and I need help." I crossed my arms. "Okay, God, this is so hard to say. I got involved with some people, bad people. I owe them money, a lot of money, and they're threatening me, Sarah. I'm scared." "How much money?" $8,000. I actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. $8,000? How did you even manage to get $8,000 in debt? Gambling, online gambling. I thought I could win it back, but I just kept losing more and more. And I borrowed from the wrong people to keep playing, and now they want their money back with interest and— "Where's your father?" I interrupted. "Why isn't he helping you?" Her face crumpled. "He won't." I asked him for the money, told him what was going on, and he said no. He said I got myself into this mess and I need to figure out how to get myself out. My mum said the same thing. I don't have anyone else to ask. "So you came to me, the person you treated like garbage for 3 years? The person you spread rumors about? The person whose marriage you helped destroy?" She started crying. I know I was terrible to you. I know I don't deserve your help. But I'm desperate, Sarah. These people are dangerous. I don't know what they're going to do if I don't pay them back." I looked at this young woman crying in my living room, and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger, definitely. Resentment. But also, surprisingly, pity. She looked broken, scared, genuinely terrified. And despite everything she'd done to me, I didn't want to see her hurt. Sit down, I said finally. She sat on my couch, wiping her eyes. I sat in the chair across from her. Tell me everything, I said. And I mean everything. No lies, no half-truths. If you want my help, you need to be completely honest with me. She nodded and started talking. The story that emerged was sad and predictable. After moving back in with her mother, Madison had been miserable. Catherine had indeed instituted strict rules. Madison had to get a job, contribute to rent and groceries, keep her space clean, come home at reasonable hours. She'd gotten a job at a retail store, hated it, quit after 2 weeks. Then she'd bounced around to a few other jobs, never lasting more than a month anywhere. She'd started gambling online as a way to make easy money, so she wouldn't have to keep working jobs she hated. At first, she'd won a little bit, which had encouraged her to bet more. Then she started losing. She borrowed money from friends to keep playing, sure that her luck would turn around. When her friends stopped lending to her, she'd found people online who would loan money at terrible interest rates. The debt just kept growing, she said, her voice small. And I was too ashamed to tell anyone until it was too late. When I finally told my dad and mum, they were furious. My dad said I was an adult and needed to face the consequences of my choices. He said he'd been enabling me my whole life and he wasn't going to do it anymore. He's right, I said. I know, she cried. I know he's right. And I know I've been a terrible person. I've been spoiled and entitled and mean. I ruined your marriage. I ruined my relationship with my dad. I've burned every bridge I had. And now I'm in danger and I have no one to blame but myself. We sat in silence for a few moments. Then I said, "Why did you hate me so much, Madison? From the very first time we met, you seemed determined to make my life miserable. What did I ever do to you?" She was quiet for a long time before answering. "You didn't do anything. That's kind of the point. You were nice and normal and put together, and being around you made me feel like a failure, like a screw-up. My mum was a mess after the divorce, and my dad felt guilty all the time, and I learned I could use that to get whatever I wanted. But you didn't feel sorry for me. You expected me to act like an adult, and I hated that. So you took it out on me." "Yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I mean it." I believed her. I could see genuine remorse in her eyes, hear it in her voice. But I also knew that sorry wasn't enough. "Here's what I'm willing to do," I said. "I will help you with this debt, but I have conditions, non-negotiable conditions." "Anything," she said immediately. "First, you're going to pay me back, every penny. I don't care if it takes you years. We'll set up a payment plan and you'll stick to it." She nodded. "Second, you're going to get help, real help, therapy, a financial advisor, maybe Gamblers Anonymous, whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't happen again." "Okay." "Third, and this is the most important one, you're going to get your life together. You're going to find a job and keep it. You're going to learn to be responsible, to take care of yourself, to stop expecting other people to fix your problems. This is the last time anyone bails you out. Do you understand?" "I understand." "I mean it, Madison. If you take my money and then blow it or get into trouble again, you're on your own. This is it, your last chance." "I know. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much." I called Patricia Henderson that afternoon. She was surprised to hear from me, but even more surprised when I explained what I needed. She connected me with someone who specialized in debt negotiation, and we were able to settle Madison's debts for about $6,000 instead of $8,000. I paid it, and Madison signed a legal agreement to pay me back in monthly installments. But I didn't just give her the money and send her on her way. I stayed involved. I helped her find a therapist who specialized in addiction issues. I connected her with a friend who worked in HR and helped her revise her resume and practice for job interviews. When she got a job as an administrative assistant at a small marketing firm, ironically in the same field I worked in, I checked in with her regularly to see how it was going. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks. Madison struggled with the structure and expectations of full-time work. She complained a lot at first, but slowly, gradually, she started to change. She showed up to work on time. She completed her assignments. She even got a compliment from her boss during her 3-month review. She moved out of Catherine's house and into a small studio apartment that she could afford on her salary. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, paid for with her own money. She started taking community college classes in the evenings, working toward finishing her degree, and she started paying me back. $50 a month at first, then $100 when she got a small raise. It would take years for her to repay the full amount, but that wasn't really the point. The point was that she was taking responsibility. About 6 months after Madison had shown up at my door, she invited me to lunch. We met at a casual cafe near her apartment. "I wanted to update you on everything," she said, pulling out a notebook. "I've been going to therapy every week. I haven't gambled in 6 months. My therapist had me install blocking software on my phone and computer. I've been at my job for 7 months now, and they just promoted me to senior administrative assistant. I'm taking 2 classes this semester and getting good grades. And I've paid you back." She consulted her notebook. $650 so far. "That's great, Madison. I'm proud of you." She looked up, her eyes suspiciously shiny. "You are?" "Yeah. I know how hard it is to change patterns you've had your whole life. You're doing the work. That takes courage." "I want to apologize again," she said, "for everything, for how I treated you, for the things I said, for the rumors I spread. You didn't deserve any of that." "No, I didn't, but I appreciate you saying it. Have you talked to my dad lately?" she asked. "No, we haven't been in contact since the divorce was finalized. He misses you. He told me that, said divorcing you was the biggest mistake of his life." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness, but mostly I just felt nothing. The love I'd had for Michael felt like it belonged to a different person, a different life. "How is he?" I asked, more out of politeness than genuine curiosity. "He's okay, working a lot. His house is clean now," she added with a small smile. "No messes everywhere. He seems lonely, though. I think he realizes what he lost." We finished our lunch, and as we were leaving, Madison stopped me. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you help me? After everything I did, why would you give me another chance?" I thought about it for a moment. Because everyone deserves a chance to change. Because I remembered that underneath all the entitlement and bad behavior, you're a young woman who's been struggling. And because I believe people are capable of growth if they're willing to do the work, you were willing. She hugged me then, and I hugged her back. It wasn't a complete reconciliation. Too much had happened for us to ever have a close relationship. But it was a step toward peace. I'm sitting on the balcony of my apartment, not the same one from back then, but a nicer place I moved to 2 years ago, watching the sunset over the Portland skyline and thinking about how much life can change in just a few years. Madison paid off her debt to me last month. It took her 2.5 years, but she did it. Every payment was on time. She finished her associate's degree and now works as a junior marketing coordinator at a tech company. She has her own 1-bedroom apartment, a serious boyfriend, and a life that she built herself. We're not close, but we're friendly. She texts me occasionally, usually when she has a work question or wants advice about something. Last month, she invited me to her graduation from the community college. I went, sat with Catherine in the audience, and cheered when Madison walked across the stage to get her diploma. Michael was there too, sitting a few rows behind us. We nodded to each other but didn't talk. Catherine and I have stayed in touch, actually. We meet for coffee every few months. It's strange being friends with my ex-husband's ex-wife, but we bonded over the shared experience of dealing with Madison and Michael's dysfunction. She's been dating someone new, a divorced dad with 2 teenage kids of his own. She says it's nice being with someone who understands the complications of blended families. As for me, I'm happy, really genuinely happy in a way I wasn't for years while I was married to Michael. I'm still single. I dated a few people seriously over the past few years, but nothing stuck. I'm okay with that. I've learned that being alone is better than being in a relationship that makes you miserable. My career is thriving. I got another promotion last year and now manage a team of 4 people. I bought a condo last fall, my first property that's truly mine. I've travelled more in the past 3 years than I did in the entire decade before. Iceland, Costa Rica, Portugal. I joined a hiking club and made a whole new group of friends. I started painting again, something I loved in college but stopped doing when life got busy. I think about the ultimatum sometimes. About that moment in the kitchen when I told Michael that Madison had to leave or I would. People have asked me if I regret it, if I wish I'd tried harder to make the marriage work. The answer is no, not even a little bit. That ultimatum wasn't really about Madison moving out. It was about whether Michael was willing to prioritize our marriage, to set healthy boundaries, to be a true partner instead of just enabling his daughter's destructive behavior. He chose not to do those things, and that choice told me everything I needed to know. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most important thing I've ever done for myself. It taught me that I deserve respect, that I deserve to have my needs matter, that I don't have to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. The whole experience taught me about boundaries, about self-respect, about the difference between being compassionate and being a doormat. I learned that you can't save people who don't want to be saved, and you can't fix relationships that only one person is willing to work on. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough, that you can love someone and still need to walk away, that caring about someone doesn't mean sacrificing your own well-being for them. And I learned that endings can be beginnings, that what feels like the worst thing that could happen can actually be the catalyst for building a better life. Would I do things differently if I could go back? Maybe. Maybe I would have set firmer boundaries from the beginning. Maybe I would have insisted on couples counseling sooner. Maybe I would have left sooner before things got as bad as they did. But I can't go back. None of us can. All we can do is learn from our experiences and try to make better choices going forward. Madison learned that lesson too, eventually. It took hitting rock bottom, facing real consequences, and doing the hard work of changing her patterns. But she did it. She grew up. And while I'm not naive enough to think she's completely transformed, growth is a lifelong process and setbacks happen. She's so much better than she was. She's building a life she can be proud of, a life based on her own accomplishments rather than her father's money and guilt. As for Michael, I don't know. I hear bits and pieces from Catherine and Madison. He's still working at the same firm, still living in the same house. He dated someone for a few months last year, but it didn't work out. Madison says he seems sadder than he used to be, that he's finally recognized how his inability to parent effectively cost him his marriage and nearly cost him his relationship with his daughter too. I hope he's learned something from all of this. I hope he's grown. But that's not my concern anymore. He's not my responsibility. My phone buzzes, pulling me out of my thoughts. It's a text from Amy. Wine night at my place Friday. I have news. I smile and text back, absolutely, can't wait to hear it. This is my life now. Friend dates and hiking trips and work projects and quiet evenings on my balcony with Mango purring on my lap. It's simple, peaceful, and completely mine. And you know what? It's enough. More than enough. It's everything.